On January 29th, 2025, Natalie Cochran, who is currently serving a federal prison sentence for a Ponzi scheme, was found guilty of first-degree murder of her husband, Michael Cochran. If you haven't listened to our episode on Michael, we highly suggest you listen to it before listening to this episode. We're going to have it linked below. You're just going to be really confused.
Pretty much.
Welcome back to Justice 4. We're your hosts. I'm Jackie.
And I'm Sam.
Welcome to our very first trial recap. We've waited a long time.
An official trial recap, not just like our little post and whatnot.
Or a little blurb at the end of an episode.
Yeah.
So back in July, we covered Michael's case and a good bit of Natalie's Ponzi scheme. Mm-hmm. So just to refresh your memory, in Michael and Natalie, they were high school sweethearts in West Virginia who went off to college together, got married, had 2 children. And Natalie was a pharmacist and Michael worked in IT. He also coached youth sports in the community. Michael and Natalie were well known and liked. In June of 2017, Natalie quit working as a pharmacist and she opened the businesses TSG and TMG. The businesses dealt in DoD gun contracts and other government contracts.
Which is wild.
Absolutely
Still wild to me.
Overall, Natalie got her friends and family to invest over $2 million into her fake business. As Michael was beginning to suspect something was not legit with the business, he suddenly fell ill and 5 days later died in hospice. While Natalie was being investigated for the fraudulent businesses, and suspicion around Michael's death began to arise, leading to Natalie being accused of poisoning Michael with insulin. After years of delays in exhuming Michael's body twice, we finally got to trial. So, we listened to every minute trial, so you didn't have to. Well,
wrong, I did not.
Well, I listened to every minute. Sam tried.
I tried. There was way too many mouth noises and the breathing. I suffer from misophonia. I almost threw my phone. It was bad. It was really bad. Not a fan. Not a fan.
Yeah. She had to bow out quite a few times, but she was a trooper. She came back when it mattered.
I did. I tried.
But I got y'all.
And I just got recap. It worked out really well for me.
And angry snaps. Angry snaps.
Yeah.
This was actually a really good trial to watch. It had all your favorite elements. A great judge, well-spoken prosecution, a jury that wanted to see this through to the very end, and of course, a defense attorney that you wish would just shut the fuck up.
Period. I will say I loved the judge in this.
Loved him.
Loved this judge.
Loved him. We're going to talk about him in a second.
Yeah.
The trial lasted roughly 11 days.
About, yeah.
We had like a Friday off. We had a long weekend. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And they couldn't figure out what they wanted to do on Monday.
We weren't in a hurry in West Virginia by any means. No. Okay. Including, like, jury selection was 2 days. They pulled out of 500 jurors, ended up with ours. And our judge. Oh my gosh. He's probably like a top 5 judge now.
Yeah.
Easily. Judge Kirkpatrick. He is exactly what you picture when you think of a sweet Southern grandpa.
Yeah.
All right. And his love language is food.
Yeah.
He made sure the jurors were eating well, had foods they liked. It was a massive concern for him.
Thank you very much for the fudge. I will eat all the fudge that I can get, as you can see, and I appreciate it very much. And don't be despondent that you just got donut holes this morning, because I've decided to declare a pizza day today, and I'm going to have pizza for you for lunch. So if all goes well, your pizza will arrive a little bit before noon, so you'll have a few minutes to get ready for it. And this will not be cheap pizza. This will be top-of-the-line pizza from Pasquale's.
So, opening morning of trial, he comes in, he goes, I hope everybody had their Bob Evans breakfast and is nice and ready.
I miss Bob Evans so much, though.
He goes on a few days later, all right, so I can see we're all kind of getting tired of donut holes because there's a lot left over. How we feel about sausage biscuits?
Sausage biscuits.
Everybody will have a sausage biscuit waiting for you in the morning. Another day.
I love it.
So I'm thinking about Chick-fil-A tomorrow. Get me a chicken sandwich. And it ain't nothing for me to grab 14 more. How's everyone feel about chicken sandwiches?
I love him.
He brought in like pizza, and my sister says it's like a really nice pizza place up in Beckley. Oh yeah. And he made sure every day he's like, all right, go home and get you some dinner.
I love it.
He told them to let the bailiff know what kind of food they like so that everybody can be happy and eating right.
That is one jury. I mean,
cute.
Okay, I would love to be on multiple juries just because of who I am as a person. Fucked up in the head. But that jury, down just for the food, you know?
It was great.
Ugh.
But
Yep.
don't let that sweetness fool you.
I know.
He was very firm, and he did a great job of keeping cool with the defense's constant objections and berating of witnesses. And I mean, I have never seen a defense berate witnesses the way that this man did.
Yeah.
And I mean, every one of them in every phase for everything.
Yeah.
We'll talk more about it later. So many questions we had at the end of our episode on Michael were answered during trial. Better yet, a bunch of them were answered in the prosecution's opening statements. I was floored. They came out swinging. The prosecuting attorneys were Tom Truman and Ashley Akerd. And Tom Truman became the lead prosecutor in Raleigh County back in November of 2024 after coming out of retirement in September to help the current, or at the time current, now former, Ben Hatfield. And he actually ended up resigning in like the November, December area. And so Tom stepped back out.
So,
that
right
was
before.
a lot of our like delays and stuff leading up
Yeah.
to trial had a lot to do with that. We didn't have a sequestered jury. We actually had a very lax jury.
Yeah.
I believe on a Friday when we didn't have trial, they were allowed to go to work if they wanted to. Yeah. It was
What?
so interesting.
They,
Yeah, he
I
was
don't
like,
think they're legally allowed to do that.
well, he was like, I know some of your bosses might be getting a little mad with how long this trial's going, or some of you might need to go to work, and that's fine. Just don't talk to anybody.
Interesting.
Yeah, I thought that was really weird. We actually used our first alternate juror on day one.
Oh.
So, and also something that I don't know if it was Court TV's fault for not having the footage delayed or not being more on top of it, but this judge was freely using jurors' full names in the beginning.
I remember that.
Day one. Like who the alternate juror's full name was, the juror who wasn't showing up full name. Like I didn't list any of their names in this, but we probably heard 5 full names for jurors.
Yeah.
So our juror who didn't show up did everything in her power when she left to not do this. She talked to somebody about the case on the way home. She got home and decided to email the court at like 7 a.m. the next morning, not that night, to say, oh, I have a special needs kid. I don't have childcare for him. I don't have a ride. I don't have a car. I can't do this. And I talked to somebody about the case already. So oops. So the judge goes, well, I could hold her in contempt, send a deputy out there, drag her in here, and make her come in. But I don't want to deal with that. So we're going to let her be.
They would have so
Don't
many
do this.
problems.
Yeah. So he just basically used an alternate juror so that they didn't have any issues with the trial or anything else going forward.
Hey, yeah, don't do that, by the way.
Just, and it was the thing was like they were so mad because they asked all these questions at the end and they
Yeah.
select you. Do you have transportation? Do
Yeah.
you have childcare? Can you do this? Blah, blah, blah. Like, and she did.
Yeah.
So,
I wonder if there was something else. Maybe I don't know.
no, he read and listed all the things.
No, I know, but I mean, like, for her, like, if she's just like, yeah, I'm totally fine, and then she's just like, I'm not fine. What?
Yeah.
Ma'am, you don't realize.
Maybe she just didn't know how to say it in the minute, like the moment.
Maybe. I don't know.
Yeah.
Weird.
So Tom Truman opened up strong for the state. They came straight out that there's no direct evidence, there's no DNA. Everything is circumstantial. But circumstantial evidence is just as good as direct evidence. Then he went on to reveal that Natalie was the diabetes counselor for the pharmacy she worked at, which meant that when someone was diagnosed with diabetes and came into the pharmacy to get their pump and insulin, Natalie would take them into a separate room and have a meeting with them, educating them on all things diabetes. How to check their blood sugar, how to administer insulin, how to count their carbs and their food intake and their sugar, and how to measure everything. This was her job.
Ugh.
She specialized in diabetes and insulin.
Diabetes.
Which, by the way, that is how it kept getting said in the trial a lot. This is also how she met and became very close friends with her neighbor. This neighbor is who Natalie asked for insulin the day that Michael collapsed.
Mm-hmm.
Natalie also sent a picture of Michael's collapsed body on the floor to her neighbor and other family members and friends. She then called over contractors to move Michael from the floor to the couch, enlisted the help of her sister and daughter to change Michael's clothes after he swallowed himself, ignored the pleas of medical professionals and a state trooper to take Michael to the hospital. Natalie simply said, I'm just going to let him sleep it off. Tom also discussed how close Michael was to finding out Natalie's lies and that the business was fake. The day Michael collapsed was the same day they were supposed to fly to Lynchburg, Virginia to meet with the Bank of America.
Oh my gosh.
So we learned a lot.
I'm going to tell you right now, though, that, like, if any of you, anyone, honestly, if anyone collapsed in front of me, I wouldn't be like, snap, let's take a picture of this and send it off to a bunch of people. Like, if you ate shit, that's different. If you're just
But
collapsing
he's
in
not just
front
like
of me,
laying on the floor. Like he is like
it was like he was
curled
kind of in
up
the
like
fetal
that.
position, kind of.
I also like to point out, because I didn't know anywhere else to put this in here, Michael's mom was a retired RN and lived 10 minutes away. I believe we touched on that in the original episode. I'm not entirely sure, but I kind of felt a little shocked when I learned that at trial.
I don't remember that.
I don't remember
at
that
all.
being on there. Yeah, lived 10 minutes away. Was a retired RN. Natalie never called her. That morning, at least.
Huh.
The flight to Lynchburg. I think we knew about it. I just didn't know it was supposed to happen that day and also got canceled that day.
How convenient.
Yeah, super convenient. I'll read the text in a minute. The big purpose of this flight and why it was so important was because Natalie was telling Michael that all their money, like millions of dollars, was tied up in the Bank of America in Virginia.
And probably...
So Michael thought that he needed to go to Virginia because they were going to be talking to the bank and figuring out all the money and how it, coming in and all this.
And probably because his parents still hadn't really been paid yet either.
Yes.
And that's why he was questioning it. It's because of his parents not getting their money back yet.
So we're really deep in the questioning and all this. But they were actually going there to finalize setting up the accounts. So when banks, big financial institutions, deal with people who have money of this large sums and amounts, it's different than me and you walking into a bank to open up a bank account.
Yeah.
They were getting a chartered flight from Charleston, West Virginia to Lynchburg, Virginia. And this bank, we're talking rolling out the red carpet and white gloves. They are going to pick them up from the airport. They are going to drive them to the bank. We are talking millions of dollars of an account. We're talking government contracts. They are prime clients. They will do anything for them. This was a very big, important thing.
Look here, Bank of America, $10. Let me know if you're in.
So that's just to kind of clear that up. Now, the defense's opening was completely opposite from the state. So Natalie's defense team are her court-appointed lawyers that she got when she was charged with this. I feel like, okay, so I had to Google it. While she's in federal prison, she is allowed to pay for lawyers out of pocket for another case.
Okay.
Google will not let me specifically ask this enough to give me the answer. If you're a lawyer, please answer. I'm not sure she could pay for court-appointed lawyers, or she could not pay for her own lawyers and had to use court-appointed lawyers because any money that she has automatically goes to victims' families.
Probably.
So I think that's how this happened here.
That actually makes so much sense. So I've imagined that's probably why. Any money that comes to her.
Oh, we're going to talk about that later and how she's getting around that.
Ew.
Yeah. So her attorneys are Stanley Selden and Matthew Victor, a.k.a. Penguin Man, like from the Batman movies.
He was the one breathing into the mouth.
Everything about this man annoys me. Everything. And that should make a good defense attorney, correct? No, it doesn't. He, of course, delivered the opening statement, and he came straight out saying, Natalie is not a bad person. She is not a good girl. Ugh, that phrase bugs me.
He said she is not a good girl?
Yeah.
She is a bad person. She is not a good girl. He kept using that phrase a lot. My client is not a good girl.
Yeah.
She defrauded friends and family, and she is paying for it, but that doesn't make her a murderer. He claims that Michael knew about the Ponzi scheme, and he was a part of it. Michael was the leader of the company, calling him a very domineering in the business and family. Then he began painting this image of Michael as a bodybuilder, the image of health, saying he wanted to be like Arnold Schwarzenegger. He was taking steroids and other illegal substances from Mexico. He said the type of insulin found in the house can't kill you, but the state wants you to think it can. Finally, bringing up previous hospital stays Michael had for seizures and how he hated hospitals and not to be taken to one ever again. So Natalie was just respecting Michael's wishes to not go to the hospital that day.
I feel like I've been giggling a lot, and I'm just really uncomfortable because I don't know how else to
Oh
feel
no,
about
giggle
any of
during
this.
this because I was laughing and yelling.
This is a trauma response for me. I don't know what else to do.
So, prosecution witnesses that were called consisted of 2 law enforcement officers. One was involved with both the Ponzi scheme investigation and the murder investigation. They had forensic pathologist, the pilot, banker, FBI chemist, medical examiner, endocrinologist, and friends of Natalie and Michael.
And the neighbors.
That's friends of.
I
yeah.
know. That's part of the one I watched.
First up, let's talk about the investigators.
Yeah.
Get them out of the way. Main investigator on Natalie's case that testified is Robert Heinzman, I'm sorry, and Lieutenant Tim Bledsoe. And both gave us an insight into Natalie's actions leading up to Michael's death and after. Robert Heinzman is basically a badass of law enforcement. He's like a private investigator, finance investigator. He was a state trooper. And now he's an attorney.
Period.
Right? And this last investigation he did as a Leo. He testified mainly that Michael believed the business was legit and was starting to press Natalie more and more about returns and where the money was. He said the business was legitimately registered with the state. Mm-hmm. So Michael did have reason to believe this business was legit. And on paper, it was a real business. There was a physical office. There was bank accounts he could see. There was physical contracts he was working on.
Yeah.
Given to him by Natalie. And based on his investigations, in the end, Michael was asking the same questions his investigation asked. There was a document, and this was a main document in this, that states that Natalie is a 51% owner and Michael's 49%. It's on paper.
Yeah.
And whether or not Michael was part of the Ponzi scheme was a big point of contention in this trial. The defense was very, very heavy on he knew about it. But they were objecting left and right to anything that had to deal with a fraud case, which made no sense.
Yeah.
Mr. Heinzman was the first witness, and the defense absolutely berated him. And I have never heard a defense talk to a witness like this, and it didn't change. But fortunately, these witnesses were not having it. The defense would ask a multi-layered question and then cut the witness off mid-answer and say, it's a yes or no answer.
Yeah, I saw that a couple times.
And then they would try to answer the question, he'd cut him off. It's a yes or no answer. To the point where the judge had to start stopping him to be like, hi, can you let them finish answering? Yeah. And the prosecution had to as well. I mean, it was multiple witnesses multiple times. It didn't matter if it was an expert or not. Mm-hmm. Lieutenant Tim Bledsoe had multiple interviews with Natalie about Michael's death. With each interview, Natalie's story changed. She would add something or change something. And so her first interview was on April 8th, and this was almost 2 months after Michael died. Natalie was interviewed just about what happened. Mm-hmm. What happened that day? She said she and Michael were at home together. Michael went into the kitchen. She suddenly heard a thud about 10 a.m. She went in the kitchen to find Michael on the floor and discovered a bottle of clopamine citrate, a supplement to boost testosterone, on the counter. Story 2 was told a month later on May 7th. Bledsoe said Natalie told him that she and Michael had been sitting together in the living room for about an hour when he went into the kitchen, threw up in the sink, then fell and hit his head on the countertop and ended up on the floor. This time, though, she found the clopamine citrate in the cabinet. She also told him that the evening before, Michael was the best he'd ever been. Story 3 came the next day on May 8th. Natalie told him that they had gone their separate ways in the morning, and upon returning home, Michael went to sleep on the couch for an hour. Then went into the kitchen. He threw up in the sink before collapsing and hitting his head. Then Natalie went on to add that Michael was injecting himself with insulin to help with his bodybuilding. When asked where he would inject, she listed a few places, here and there, before finally saying, oh yeah, he liked to inject it in his back.
Could Did you, what?
So I always wondered how the insulin got brought up into this. Because it wasn't suspected at the hospital, wasn't suspected at hospice. We didn't have an autopsy for 7 months. I always wondered where all of a sudden the cops were like, and she killed him with insulin.
I'm also super confused because, insulin doesn't help with bodybuilding, babe.
So, actually, I
Go.
Googled this.
Please, tell me.
Because I was losing my mind over the defense.
I feel like I'm losing my mind.
Actually, insulin is used by bodybuilders after working out. It is used to rebuild their muscles faster.
Ew.
It is Mr. Olympian. That is how he died.
Penguin Man.
Penguin Man's, in the opening, he said Mr. Olympian died with that. And I had to Google it. So yes, insulin is used. It is frowned upon. Don't do it. It can kill you.
I've literally never heard of
When
a
you
bodybuilder
Google
doing
it,
that.
like the third thing it says is, it can kill you.
Also,
don't do it.
Insulin is so fucking expensive.
Yes.
It's so expensive.
So, it's just real fun that Natalie brings it up herself.
Oh.
Girl, why are you explaining things away before they're even asked about?
Yeah.
There was, in fact, insulin taken from the house. FBI forensic examiner Earl Gleam
I don't know.
examined the vials recovered from Natalie's home and conducted that the cap on the top of the vial containing insulin had been punctured. Mm-hmm. No steroids were found in any of the searches of the house. And the drugs from Mexico, were actually female fertility drugs from Florida that Natalie got.
Ew.
Yeah. So, now we're going to talk about your favorite person, Jennifer Davis. She's the neighbor and friend.
Oh. I was like, I don't know anyone named Jennifer Davis.
Since we're talking about insulin, let's talk about where it came from. Natalie's neighbor, Jennifer Davis, testified that the morning of February 6th, the day Michael collapsed, Natalie texted her saying that Michael and her were sick and that insulin helped mitigate the effects of her cancer treatments. Jennifer then offered Natalie some of her son's insulin and asked if there was anything else she needed. So Jennifer put together a little care bag for Natalie, and her husband, Chris Davis, dropped it off at their house.
Wasn't the defense at one point saying that, she has the insulin in her fridge for the neighbor's kid just in case?
Yeah, we're about to get there.
Oh.
His wife, Jennifer, told us exactly what was in the bag. Some Propel, a Diet Coke that Natalie asked for, and a brand new, unopened vial of Humalog insulin. Jennifer says, "You're welcome, but that's nothing. I sure wish I could do more for you." And Natalie's words are, "That was perfect." And I bet it was.
I bet it was.
So that wasn't Jennifer Davis testifying to it because it was kind of asked over some questions, but I thought that Ashley Aker's summary of it was perfect.
Yeah.
So her little "I bet it was" snaps. So
I love sassy people, sassy prosecutors.
Oh, yes. Jennifer went on to say that later that morning, Natalie texted her a picture of Michael unconscious on the floor, followed by his vitals. And when I tell you my jaw dropped at this, because they showed the picture and his vitals. Included in his vitals was Michael's blood sugar, which is odd because Michael isn't diabetic, so there would be no reason for Natalie to check that. Mm-hmm. Once again, that picture is sent to multiple people.
Also, for some reason, she kept sending his vitals to people.
Yeah.
Why?
You're not a doctor.
Okay.
You're an ex-pharmacist, honey.
Okay.
In the cross-examination, the defense was trying very hard to prove Natalie was allowed to have Jennifer's son's insulin at her house. Mm-hmm. They used the fact that Natalie was a certified diabetic educator, and Natalie educated the Davises at the pharmacy about his insulin. How to use it, how to dose it, and this brought them closer together. They would text all the time. Did I measure this right? Is this enough? How much insulin do I need to give him if he's reading like this? Because that's a lot. If I became a type 1 diabetic right now, I'd be terrified to die all the time. Just from doing normal things. I can't imagine having to regulate this for your kid at a young age.
I could not imagine.
If I had the access to text a pharmacist every day to make sure I was doing it right, you bet your ass I would.
For sure.
And I grew up, my cousin who brought this case to us originally, she is a type 1 diabetic and a pharmacist in West Virginia. So, Yeah. I know a lot about this, and even with I know from my childhood and growing up with her, I would still be terrified to do this as a parent. I don't know how my
Yeah.
aunt and uncle did it.
Good for you guys.
So the defense tried really hard to get Jennifer to admit that Natalie was allowed to keep insulin at her house for their son. She was allowed to administer it, and she wasn't. She was not. They said that her and her husband Chris were the only two people. If they were not available, they would become available.
Yeah.
Going to school, coming home, doing something. They made it to where they were available to do this. There was nothing.
Generally, most parents would, because you want to make sure that your kid's getting it properly.
Yeah.
And because people can die from insulin. So, like, there's been so many cases of people having this issue. You want to make sure your kid's not going to fucking die at the hands of someone else, like, of their incompetency.
Yeah. Also, one more thing she said.
Oh.
Listen to this.
I had even asked her at one point if there was anything that I could do to help her, anything I can get for her. And she had made a very just odd comment. She said, if you could help me hold a pillow over his face, because I don't like seeing him this way.
So there's that.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is like first day of testimony too. She's like our second witness.
Yeah. Yeah, don't do that.
Yeah,
I've
so
said that a few times already during this.
You're going to keep saying that.
Yeah.
So we're definitely starting to get an idea of what happened that day.
Yeah.
So before we go into all the expert testimony about insulin and autopsies and nurses, I want to go over the rest of the friends and family testimony that were present that day at the house. And I want to remind you that the narrative we had about these events and everything surrounding it before trial is very, very heavily Natalie narrated. Mm-hmm. Like we suspected. But it was just very much confirmed during trial because everyone kept saying those were all things Natalie was saying.
Natalie said this. Natalie told me
Like,
this.
so a lot of testimonies were spent correcting Natalie's bullshit. John and Stephanie Hamilton.
Yep.
So if you remember, John is the state trooper. Mm-hmm. Stephanie Hamilton is a physician's assistant, PA. And they were also, Stephanie was a victim of Natalie's Ponzi scheme because she invested like with her like nurse people and stuff on her own. So John didn't talk a lot on the Ponzi, but Stephanie did.
Do you mention how the defense, like every time that they would mention the Ponzi scheme, he would be like, the alleged Ponzi scheme, like, sir, she was already convicted of that. It's not alleged anymore.
Yeah.
Sir.
Yeah.
What?
She's already serving her federal prison time for the Ponzi scheme.
That's
It's
a really
not
good note
alleged.
to point out because, like, the defense really does like back onto them always objecting about the fraud.
Yeah.
They do kept saying allegedly, even though they start off with she is not the kind of person you would want to invite over to dinner and help you with finances. So
She's not a good girl. She's
like
bad
the defense
girl.
literally says like she's not the person you would invite over for dinner
Yeah.
in their opening. Even though John's a state trooper, he's testifying as a civilian.
Yeah.
Because he wasn't being a state trooper in this case at all.
He was not in part of any investigation of it.
On February 4th, 2 days before Michael collapsed, Natalie texted Stephanie about getting an injectable steroid to help with her sickness. Stephanie offered to do the injection for Natalie, but Natalie responded she could do it herself. Yeah. When John saw Michael on the couch that day, and he wasn't responding, he told Natalie that she needed to take Michael to the hospital.
Yep.
Natalie responded with, he's fine. I'm just going to let him sleep it off. That's when Stephanie joined at the house, and Natalie told her that Michael had a seizure, like he had back in October, and that he said he never wanted to go to the hospital again, and he would be mad if he ever woke up there again. Mm-hmm. Natalie told Stephanie the vitals she took earlier, and Stephanie told Natalie, Michael really needs to go to the hospital. I know he doesn't want to go, but he needs to go.
Yeah.
She also attempted to take his temperature and did all that, and the defense really tried to use everyone, like, being like, hey, Mike, I'm going to touch you now.
Yeah.
I'm going to do this now. Because, I'm sorry, my husband lives in a house with just me and my daughter, and it doesn't matter. I go to wake that man up, and I'm like...
He's a fighter.
He does. When you startle him, like, he straight flexes and go, like, he's
it.
never hit me. He never will. But,
Yeah.
like, It's a response when he wakes up. And that
Fight
was
or flight response is a real thing.
It must be a Mike thing, too.
And maybe. But I know for me, I'm a fighter. I'm not a flight kind of gal. Like,
Yeah.
our little
She's
Sonic
been
buddy
fighting
here,
with him.
all day long so far. He barely moves, and I'm cocking one back, ready to hit him. So it's just a stuffed animal.
Multiple people have testified about gently trying or talking to him so that they wouldn't startle him while he's asleep. Okay? And the defense really tried to use that as like he was combative. He was violent.
He was a violent man.
Whatever. Anyway, so Stephanie also really encouraged Natalie to take Michael to the hospital.
Yeah.
Saying like, I mean, she didn't take any vitals. She didn't take his blood sugar. She didn't take vitals. She took his temperature. And yeah. Mm-hmm. Then there was testimony from Jason Bose, a contractor that worked with Natalie and Michael. He said that Natalie texted him about 12 p.m. that picture of Michael on the floor and asked him to come over and help get him off the floor and onto the couch.
The most random people are getting these fucking pictures.
Right.
Okay.
Jason was at Lowe's with another contractor, Jonathan, and they went straight to the Cochran home, where they found Michael on the floor in the kitchen. Natalie said he had a seizure and fell. Jason said that Michael was unresponsive when he tried talking to him. Once Michael was on the couch, Jonathan did a sternum rub on Michael, and he didn't even move. So basically a sternum rub is where you like...
Yeah, you take your knuckles and you rub someone's sternum. Generally, it works really well if they're passed out, because then it's one of the most painful...
But you do it like really hard,
yes, you do it
right?
really hard. Actually, one of my really good friends went to... Where were we? We were on vacation somewhere, and she passed out at a table, and I had a sternum rubber, and she just wakes. She's like, "Ow!" Like,
yeah. But he didn't even flinch.
If you don't flinch,
nothing
during a sternum rub, brother, something's wrong.
They both told Natalie Michael needed to go to the hospital immediately. When Jason was asked if Michael's condition was similar to his October hospitalization, he said no. He said, that hospitalization, Michael was responsive.
Yeah.
He was awake. And after it, he complained of being dizzy. And he, they all kind of thought it was a black mold thing. Mm-hmm. But Michael told Jason and Chris Davis he thought he was being poisoned.
Huh.
And that was back in October, November.
Weird.
Speaking of Chris Davis...
That could be why he has a fight response.
Probably. Speaking of Chris Davis, Michael's best friend, and Jennifer Davis's husband. Mm-hmm. He was the one who finally came into that house and said, no, Michael's going to the hospital, and I'm going to take him right now. Mm-hmm. That was after he performed another sternum rub, and Michael did not respond.
Me just pretending to do a sternum rub on myself. I kind of hurt myself. Ow.
So, Chris loaded Michael in the car, Natalie sat in the back seat, and Chris drove them to the hospital. Mm-hmm. They asked Chris, you worked out with Michael a lot. He was a bodybuilder. He loved to do the tough mans. He said he liked to lift weights. I didn't work out with him. I wouldn't call him a bodybuilder. He did a Jeep pull once and a couple tough mutters.
Yeah.
That's about it. He was a far cry away from a bodybuilder.
Yeah.
For sure.
Just based off of what I know about bodybuilders and all of the pictures I've seen of Michael, no.
So that's the prosecution's witnesses for friends and family.
Yeah.
Before we get into the expert mumbo jumbo, I'm going to switch over to the defense real quick for the friends and family because it
was annoying.
It's annoying, and all of this flows together more to get into the other stuff if we keep it together. Natalie's sister Penny testified. And she testified that she came over on February 6th after Natalie texted her a picture of Michael on the floor. I swear we might come across one person she hasn't texted that picture to.
Me. You. It was us.
Penny said her first thought when Natalie sent her that picture was, okay, what do you want me to do about it?
Jesus.
Sisters, right?
Okay, I'll tell you right now, if my sisters ever sent me a picture of their significant other on the floor, that's not my first thought. I'll tell you that right now. Maybe I just have a little bit more compassion, which, wow.
Yeah. Watch this clip of Penny on the stand.
You indicated that Michael was on the floor. Actually, this may not be fair, but was Michael on the floor in front of the couch or next to a couch?
No, he was on the couch, but he was kind of his leg and arm were off of it, and his head was kind of on the couch part. So I helped her get him up on the couch comfortably, his head on the pillow and his arm, everything up on the couch. And I kind of held a blanket, and Nikki got him some clothes. She cleaned him up. Natalie cleaned him up.
You got me a little bit confused there. Nikki got some clothes, and
Yeah.
the defendant cleaned him up?
Yes, so she said, Nikki, run and get him some clean pants, and I kind of held a blanket there, and I just held that while she did that.
Okay. So did you participate other than holding the blanket up over Michael?
No, and I really didn't do that. To be honest, the son kept saying, I'm hungry, I'm hungry. He kept aggravating her the whole time, and she said, stop, I'm trying to deal with this. I said, why don't you just let me deal with him? And I don't recall if I took him or if I went, but I think I took him to get food and brought him back.
Okay.
So you watched that part?
Yeah, that I did.
We learned that Michael did in fact soil himself on that couch, and Natalie changed him. Not only that, she used her 13-year-old daughter to help her do it. That's Nikki. We're about to talk about her next. Just disgusting.
Yeah.
Disgusting. But even after he soiled himself and she had to clean him up, she's still refusing to take him to the hospital. Chris Davis shows up after this.
Yeah.
Penny was asked about Michael's steroid use and how many pills he took a day. She said that he took pills by the fistful daily, and she had seen him inject something a few times, but she doesn't know if it was steroids or insulin. Then Natalie and Michael's children took the stand. And Natalie's disgusting. We've already told you that. But, her smug look and, looks of appreciation. Ugh. It was just disgusting watching her watch her children on the stand.
Yeah.
Especially when you hear what I'm about to say. Their daughter, Nicole, who goes by Nikki now, is 22 years old. But at the time of Michael's death, she was 13. Their son, who is 17, he's still a minor, was only referred to as MAC during this trial. The judge was very, very adamant about this.
Yeah.
And it held very well until, the victim
Penny.
statements when everybody started using his name. But because of how adamant the judge was and everything, I'm still going to use MAC as his initials, even though his name is out there.
There was a lot of times that, specifically Penny, the sister, kept saying his name, and they were like, seriously? How many times do we have to tell you this?
Yeah. But
get
it
it.
also bugged me, and so if you notice, I left Jennifer and Chris Davis's son's name out of this.
Yeah.
They said it a lot in there, but
Yeah.
he is also a minor. So, I'm not going to use it.
Yeah, be careful, man.
He was not shown on camera.
Yeah.
Only the audio of his was shown. And he was 9 at the time. Mm-hmm. So, keep in mind while I tell you this, Nikki is 13 and MAC is 9 when all of this is happening. Let's start with Nicole or Nikki. She testified about her dad taking so many pills, it was the size of a plate when he would lay them out on the counter in the mornings. She knew about him using steroids and how he was buying them from Mexico. She said her dad was always working on contracts for the business or on phone calls. Never her mom. It was never Natalie. She claims since her brother got more attention from her dad than she did, she would always ask her dad questions about what he was doing, and he would tell her all about the contracts and show them to her. But when pressed about more specifics, she was talking more about Michael's IT career than what he did with TSM and TMG.
Yep.
Which is what he did before and while he was a youth coach. But she was positive only her dad worked on contracts and he ran the business.
I remember every single detail from when I was 13.
But
Obviously.
But she doesn't remember her dad having back surgery a year or two before that, or what middle school she was attending at the time.
What?
But she did know about all the money they had and exactly what they were offering on what houses.
Okay.
Nikki's demeanor also changed depending on who was questioning her. When the defense was questioning her, she was very responsive and engaging and a little upbeat. But it was the opposite for the state. She instantly became very smug very held back, and really uptight and just, yeah,
Like kind of annoyed.
I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. That is, until she gets tripped up on the stand and learns about something for the very first time.
Oh.
Do you know if your mom communicated with her by phone or text or anything?
I'm not sure.
Okay. So if a message went from your mom to your grandma that said, Nick and I are enjoying a little girl couch time at about 4 o'clock that evening, you wouldn't know anything about that?
I'm not sure.
Do you remember enjoying some girl time with your mom at 4 o'clock on February the 6th, 2019?
We both sat with my father. Yes.
So, basically, the state asked her if she was aware that her mom was telling her grandma that at 4 o'clock on February 6th, her and Nikki were sitting on the couch having some girl time together.
Girl time.
But in reality, Nikki and Natalie were sitting on the couch with an unconscious Michael. That Natalie had just had her 13-year-old daughter help clean up his soiled clothes and change him.
Gross.
And she found out about that for the very first time on the stand. This is also where I realized that the defense, once we have already had them say that they haven't gone through all the evidence in this trial. Like literally at the beginning, the defense admits to not looking through every piece of evidence the state presented them. This is also when I realized the defense did not actually prep all their witnesses with all of the information. And we will hear that a lot with the experts. I don't know if it was Natalie only telling them what they needed to hear and they only looked for that evidence to match it and didn't look at the other evidence. But there were quite a few moments where you went, oh, the defense didn't know about that.
Court appointed.
Yeah. So, in my opinion, and the opinion of everyone in the comments on Court TV, and the prosecutor's opinion, Nikki was very coached in her responses.
I'm not
And
sure.
this proves part of it. And the more I watch, it's really sad because you can see the betrayal go across her face with a lot of the things the state brings up to her. And it's just horrible that Natalie put her kids in this position to sit up there and lie for her and testify. And you can just tell that she filled them with so much hate for their dad. Like, almost like this was all his fault because of the lifestyle he lived.
Yeah. Honestly, like 13 and 9 are like ages of kids where they're still going to believe everything that you tell them.
Well, and let me add another little factor this before we get into MAC's testimony.
Yeah.
These are 9 and 13-year-old kids who in the past couple years, their families have come into hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Millions.
Let's talk about a middle school girl suddenly
Having
in
all
a
this
small town West Virginia, suddenly having name brand everything, makeup everything, going on vacations to Paris, going to, like, I'm talking, these kids were not sitting there paying attention, having these conversations with their parents.
Yeah.
My 11-year-old, if she had the access to this kind of money and lifestyle, trust me, she ain't gonna be sitting on the couch asking me what we doing, okay? Ain't gonna be sitting there asking me what I'm doing on my computer. She gonna be in her room on her brand new iPhone 82 and her
Texting me.
big old like wall screen that changes to where you look like you're in Miami. You remember Smart House? You could like wake up in different countries. Like that's where my kid's gonna be sitting. Not like, oh dad, let me see that government contract because you don't spend enough time with me.
But she would still be texting me. Let's be real here. Nikki
would
would
be.
still totally be texting me.
And they'd be wild texts, too.
They're already wild text. I can only imagine how much weirder it would get.
Yes. All right. Then their son, MAC, testified.
Yep.
And as we've said multiple times, he was 9 at the time. That all of the things he's about to talk about happened. And younger, too. Okay, because we're just 9 when he died. This business has been going on for 3 years at this point.
Yeah.
Oh, man. Like Nikki, he also said that Michael took pills by the fistful. And he was on steroids. He said Michael told him he was taking steroids and that he couldn't take them till he was older. Now, this is actually the one story in his entire testimony that I believe because of the way he tells it. What he said was, when he was little, he asked his dad, what are you taking? And his dad said, oh, these are to help me be big and strong. And MAC said, "Oh, can I take some?" Which is a very normal 7 to 9-year-old response. Because you want to be big and strong like your dad.
Yeah.
And Michael responded to him, "No, bud. Maybe when you're older."
Yeah.
So that is really, like, that story and how he told it is the only, like, I'm like, okay, that actually happened. I could believe that actually happened because that is a very father-son conversation to have.
But that's not being like, I'm roiding out, man. You can do this when you're
but
older.
his dad didn't be like, yes, I order my pills from Mexico and this is where they come
Yeah.
from and these are the kinds of steroids, which
Yeah.
is what his son was implying on the stand.
I mean, he just said these are these help me get big and strong. That could literally just be vitamins.
Yep.
Period.
He said his dad was
Milk.
always angry and he ran the house. He said he controlled the money and his parents didn't share bank accounts. His dad bought everything. And if his mom had money, his dad gave it to him. Like, I'm sorry, if you ask a kid who's 7 or 9 who bought you that, it's literally whatever parent was out with them,
Yeah.
not knowing whose money it is. The defense kept asking the kids about vacations they took and how they enjoyed living a lavish lifestyle and how much their dad liked spending money, to which the kids, of course, testified to all the fun stuff they got to do and all the new fun toys they had at home. The thing that pissed me off was that the defense kept asking about a Hawaii trip. That happened in 5th grade. Before any of these businesses were made. Before any of this started. This Hawaii trip has nothing to do with any of this whatsoever. But they kept bringing it up as them living a lavish lifestyle.
Because Hawaii is expensive.
Yeah, but it was when Nikki was in 5th grade.
So she
She's
was
in
10.
8th grade now.
No, she would have been
It was way before that. Yeah, 10.
10, 11.
Yeah, 10, 9, 10,
So, like,
5th
right
grade.
before.
Like, it's just crazy because, like, bring up Paris. But that was a school trip that they went on and took MAC with. There's, like, other stuff. Like, I get it, but, like, we kept focusing on the wrong thing here.
Yeah.
So, yeah, the kids were just horribly manipulated and used in this, and we'll touch on that later. The prosecution touches on it later.
For all we know, honestly, they were probably like, well, my dad's gone. My mom is technically gone. Like, they're probably trying to hold on to any last bit of, no, my mom wouldn't have done this.
Yeah, and we've seen that and stuff.
Yeah.
I'll get to some other things later that pull that back.
That's
But yeah,
valid.
it's just, I was real mad. I'm still real mad about the kids testifying underneath the defense with Natalie and the way that she used. Like, there was nothing these kids testified that came from their own memories.
Yeah.
At all.
Yeah.
All right. Expert witness testimony. I promise it's quick because it's a lot of mumbo jumbo.
Okay.
We had a lot of them. And they were arguing with each other and didn't like each other. Great time. For some reason, the defense had an expert on a phone call video listening into the entire trial the whole time to also confirm experts for the defense. It was weird. I don't really understand it. But, like, she wasn't there the whole time, only, like, most of the time of the trial. I don't know.
Okay.
Okay. So first up, we're going to have Dr. Diane Krieger, an endocrinologist and diabetes expert, testified that when Michael was admitted to the hospital on February 6th, his glucose level was 21, which is severely low. We are diabetic coma.
Yeah.
It may have been caused by a massive dose of insulin. Normal glucose levels range from 80 to 100 in a normal human. Krieger testified that tests performed before treatment would have determined whether Michael's hypoglycemia was related to insulin, but those tests were not done. Furthermore, known causes of hypoglycemia, such as severe malnutrition and drugs, did not appear to be at play in Michael's case. And Krieger's opinion was that Michael's death was related to hypoglycemia, which then caused cerebral edema or brain swelling. So basically, she injected him with insulin, made his brain swell, and that's what killed him.
Great.
The medical examiner, Dr. Kubitschek, testified that he did not find a cause of death when he autopsied Michael 7 months after his death, and therefore concluded undetermined in his report on cause and manner of death. He said moderate decomposition had set in by the time of autopsy, making it impossible to determine whether insulin was used and where the injectable site could be. He said that the body wasn't embalmed very well, and that's why he didn't have a lot to work off 7 months later.
Okay, but also, why are they doing an autopsy 7 months after he died.
Because remember, it took them 7 months to get a judge to approve exhuming the body because there was never an autopsy
'Cause
done
she
coming
did
out of hospice.
She did the funeral, like, right away.
Quick.
I remember.
Yep. And then also,
Stupid.
like, the defense goes in on the fact that, like, if she murdered him and was trying to get away with murder, she should have cremated him. But he had a will that didn't allow him to be cremated. But they didn't bring that up.
Weird.
However, Dr. Paul Uribe, yes. Sorry, I had to say it to get court to remember how it was said.
Okay.
The forensic pathologist testified that Michael's blood glucose at 21 was so low he described it as profound and concluded that he was administered insulin and that his manner of death was homicide. Uribe testified that an analysis of Michael's glucose levels suggested that though he responded to treatment, his levels would inevitably plummet, leading him to believe that a massive dose of insulin was dragging down his blood sugar despite glucose treatment. So in other words, there was more than one injection, and because of his injection, there could have been more than one, but because of the insulin injection, they couldn't adjust it at the hospital. Mm-hmm. So when he came into the hospital, they gave him insulin, or they gave him, not insulin, but they gave him something to boost his sugar levels instantly, but that wasn't even bringing it up much before he dropped again. So
what was done was...
Yeah, the only reason that his vitals and his numbers were coming back the way he was when he came in the hospital, the only explanation, according to him, was insulin injection. Both defense experts testified that Dr. Uribe's opinion on Michael's death as a homicide as the result of a fatal dose of insulin could not be substantiated by autopsy's findings. So basically, both the defense experts said, that's stupid, that didn't happen, and you can't prove that.
Wrong.
Furthermore, defense experts noted that by the time Michael was autopsied a second time by Uribe again, his body was so decomposed that you couldn't even do tissue samples. So we didn't get anything else off of that. And it wasn't productive. And finally, Dr. Banerjee testified that Michael's urine sample revealed the presence of benzodiazepines, a controlled drug for which he had no prescription for, because he was allergic. Banerjee testified...
Benzos is Xanax.
It's in Xanax. It's also in... Yeah, it's like most anxiety meds, right?
Yeah.
Banerjee testified that the drug has the potential for abuse and misuse of the drug could lead to health issues, including sudden death due to heart arrhythmia. This is when we found out, like I told you earlier, that Michael is allergic to benzodiazepines.
Yep.
And Natalie picked up a Xanax prescription that morning.
What a life.
Right. So with Michael coming into the hospital with benzos in his urine, which he's allergic to, and his blood sugar at 21, and him being unconscious and unable to tell anyone what's going on, they begin to treat it like an overdose pretty much. Even as Natalie is spewing a history of seizures that Michael has zero medical proof of, or record of, it's just Natalie telling the doctors this. And he's at the hospital, he's unconscious, they start doing this for this, because all she's saying is seizures. He had seizures, he was in here for seizures. But they look at his October records, there's no medical records of seizures. Nothing in there pointed to him having a seizure, just notes of Natalie saying he had a seizure.
Yeah. But he was in the hospital for a back issue, right? Wasn't that what it was?
Like he was really dizzy,
Okay.
and like passed out and like wasn't feeling good and stuff, and they thought that it was like a mold problem. But it kind of
now I remember.
Sounds a wee bit like
Something
a minier
else.
version of this. Like we didn't full send in October, which was our original theory.
Yeah.
So also something to note from the ER doctors, he had no head or face injuries.
But he fell and he hit himself.
On the counter.
Yeah.
And then, if we add in the testimony of Zachary Halsey, the Cochran family doctor, who treated Natalie on February 5th and 6th for flu-like symptoms, he said that her tests for flu and strep were negative on both days. She complained that she was throwing up overnight and on the morning of February 6th. So he gave her an injection of promethazine and a prescription for an oral promethazine for her nausea. Based on his evaluation of Natalie, he believed that she was sick and would not have advised her to travel on the 6th. But he didn't advise her because she didn't ask her about that. But I'll touch on that. I just wanted that in there. He also testified to the fact that Natalie did not have cancer.
Huh. Weird.
Natalie came to him suspecting she had cancer, telling him that she had already spoke with the Cleveland Clinic and that she wanted to go to the Duke Clinic. So, Dr. Halsey, contact with Duke. But her cancer was never actually confirmed. And you can't just walk into Duke or a cancer center and be like, hi, I have cancer and I need treatment.
Yeah.
You have to have paperwork. You have to go through a lot of stuff before you can even get there. Mm-hmm. There is not a single medical record, document, paperwork, Cleveland, Duke, or in West Virginia that states that Natalie has ever had cancer.
Hey, if you don't have cancer, don't lie and say you do. Okay? Thank you.
So, now that Natalie doesn't have cancer, because, the defense has been really pushing her cancer, and that's why she needs the insulin.
Yeah.
And to help this. Now we switch to her heart problems and her heart surgery she had before this, and how she has horrible care in the prisons, and how there just isn't good medical care, and she needs her heart medicine, and she doesn't get it.
Oh, no.
Yeah. And all of this made Natalie back out from testifying. It was right after the expert testimony and Dr. Halsey bringing up that she did not have cancer and she was faking her cancer that...
Bro, I wanted to see her testify so bad, though, because
it kept moving, too. It kept moving out days, and oh, man, I thought we were going to get it.
I thought we were going to, and prosecution would have eaten her alive.
Alive!
Ugh.
It would have been great.
It would have been amazing.
Yeah, so after the defense rested, the state recalled Robert Heinzman as a rebuttal witness, and once again, the defense were assholes. They would not let this man answer a question, or, even let the prosecution set anything up. So many objections. It was, ridiculous. He was there to respond to the children's testimony. Mm-hmm. That was the whole point of him as a rebuttal, okay? But it turned into proving Michael had no idea the business was a Ponzi scheme because, once again, the defense can't drop it.
Alleged.
The prosecution brought out pages upon pages of text messages when the defense started to berate this witness really bad.
I'm pretty sure they had, an old school projector that
they did. And they had, I think there's something like 2,000 text messages or something.
Oh, damn.
When they're trying to ask him about certain text messages. And the defense is, objecting left and right. I don't know what this has to do with anything. Blah, blah. And state goes, if you would let him talk, you would see where this is going. And defense says, no, blah, blah. And the judge goes, is this going somewhere? And he goes, you know what? If you would like, we could sit here and go through all 2,000 pages of text messages. And the judge goes, no, that's all right. Overruled. Continue.
I love this judge.
I know.
Yeah, I was like, oh, okay. Thank you. But yeah, no. So, the state wasn't playing. It was just so funny. He's like, we can sit here and go page for page if you want, because we're on a rebuttal witness. We are almost done, okay? Yeah. And the state's like, I ain't got nothing to do. It's Tuesday. I don't give a shit. So they went through text where Natalie is telling Michael how much is being deposited in their accounts and exactly how much the returns would be. To the penny, guys, before they have the returns. To the penny. There were texts from February 6th, starting at 6 a.m. Natalie told Michael she canceled the flight to Lynchburg to meet with the bank. And he said, reschedule the meeting now.
Oh.
We're going. The last text and phone interaction was right before 9 a.m. They had a text message. They had a call that lasted less than a minute. Michael did send a text later that day. Around there's an actual text communication, I think, that he sent some around 11 that we know is a phone call or a text. But this is where we find out Natalie sends a text from Michael's phone at 1:30 in the afternoon when he is unconscious about gun contracts. And that was the nail in the coffin on Michael didn't know about the Ponzi scheme. Because she tried to set it up that she knew. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, the rebuttal was a great time. Really enjoyed it. Didn't know where we were going with this.
I don't think a lot of people knew.
No. So closings were done by Ashley Akert for the state. Mm-hmm. And her opening statement that she started closing with was a phrase that her team had been using throughout the entire prep for this trial and during this trial. And it was, Natalie involved everyone and included no one.
Period.
And does that not sum up what I have said to you right here? That
Yeah.
picture, those vitals, everybody was
Yeah.
involved, but ain't nobody ever included.
Yeah.
What a phrase, guys. She argued that Natalie had the motive, means, and opportunity to kill her husband. She said Michael was getting stressed and anxious waiting for the money that was supposed to come from their government contract business, and when that day was fast approaching, Natalie had only two choices, to come clean or take him out. She asked jurors to recall their two experts that their only reasonable explanation for a healthy 38-year-old man without diabetes to present with life-threatening hypoglycemia is from an overdose of insulin, after all other causes were excluded. That's the only one that stands. She reminded jurors that Natalie's friends and family came to the house. They tried to help Michael, but she dismissed all their suggestions to take him to the hospital and insisted that he just sleep it off. And even after he urinated on himself and did not respond to attempts to revive him, she still just let him sleep it off. She cautioned the jurors against the defense theory that Michael was abusing steroids when none were found in their house. She broke it down into segments of time leading up to Michael's death, saying Michael was spending money because Natalie was telling him the same lies she was telling everyone else. She was texting him about $1.4 million deposits, and that money was coming in. But when Michael starts questioning her about where the money is, she says they're being audited, and that's why it's not there. Then Michael goes to the hospital in October right after this questioning, and her not being able to produce money? This is where Natalie starts making up seizures. There's no medical record, only record of Natalie telling them he had a seizure. Ashley recalls how Chris Davis and Michael said Michael got so irate at a bank one time because he wanted to know about the money, and he caused such a scene that the police were called. Does that sound like a man who knew that this was a fraudulent business? Natalie's next lie, the government was shut down. That's why they couldn't get their money. Then there was an audit. That's why they couldn't get their money. But don't worry, February 1st, it's all going to be there. But when that money doesn't come, Michael schedules that trip to Lynchburg, Virginia for February 6th. In the days leading up to the flight, Natalie laid her plan, so she went to the doctor and texted Michael she was getting meds for both of them. But she only got a Xanax prescription, which Michael's allergic to. She then went home where Chris Davis dropped off insulin to her. And then Ashley did this for the jury.
Ladies and gentlemen, I want you to see the size of an insulin needle. That needle I just showed you holds 30 units of the kind of insulin that Gavin Davis was prescribed and that was received by Natalie Cochran from Jennifer Davis.
First of all, I want to say, that demonstration, the defense objected to heavily. But it's called a demonstrative demonstration, and it is allowed. Basically, you're allowed to do, physical demonstrations of things. Like that one who was, stabbing his arm and,
No, he was stabbing the
yeah,
desk.
Yeah, so that's
Yeah.
one of those. Yeah. But it was actually, I was like, oh, damn, she did not. And so you saw she showed how the vial and how many units the syringe holds, and it's a lot. It is a lot.
Yeah.
She pointed out that Natalie ran to the doctor every single time she didn't feel good, but she let Michael sit for hours on a couch when he needed immediate medical attention. Natalie had the means, the knowledge, and the motive to kill Michael. Since we don't actually know what happened, only Natalie knows, but based off what the prosecution was alluding to, Natalie drugged Michael with Xanax, which he was allergic to, and once he was unconscious, she injected him with insulin and possibly more than once that day to make sure he didn't wake up like he did in October. Mm-hmm. And that is what I got out of the defense, or out of the state's entire play out, was They weren't allowed to come straight out and say that. But we laid the groundwork.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, I've been trying ever since I found this case to figure out how the heck she injected him with the insulin, because you can't just do that to a conscious person without them knowing or reacting.
Yeah.
Like, you just can't.
Not generally. I mean, like, those needles are tiny,
Yeah.
tiny. But it's still, you can still feel it a little bit.
And he would have had 10 to 15, maybe up to 30 minutes
Yeah.
to call, to react, to do something if he would have known that he was injected with something.
Yeah.
So the defense focused on that a lot. Penguin man gave our closing statements. Don't worry, there are some clips we're going to throw in here for you because it's kind of funny. He insisted the state had not proven its case for murder and suggested that Michael was an active participant in the Ponzi scheme. You know, the alleged Ponzi scheme.
Oh, alleged.
As a minority partner in the business, if they believe that, then the state's case would just fall apart. And that's why they can't believe it. He argued the state had not proven how Michael died or why he died. And he noted that 3 experts could not find a cause of death. He recalled how Dr. Kubitschek, who was in the best position to reach a conclusion, could not because of the body's decomposition. He noted the testimony of the Cochran children. He noted the children's description of his symptoms and the life-threatening conditions that his medical records reflected, such as his enlarged heart and his seizures. And, you know,
There was no proof of.
his need for taking untested drugs and supplements that he just told his kids about buying from Mexico.
Right. That they still had no proof of.
He once again conceded Natalie was a bad girl who cheated and engaged in financial crimes and shenanigans.
He said
And shenanigans. But argued she had not committed premeditated murder. And he gave this explanation.
If I'm jabbed, even by my dearest wife, or by somebody else with a substance, and if she is silent, that's one thing, and if she tells me, this is for you, you son of a gun, I hate your guts, whatnot, here it is, I'm killing you, I would have 10 to 15 minutes, maybe to 20 minutes, to 30 minutes, to call 911, to run to the hospital. I told you, 7 miles from the hospital. He would have been in the, I know it's February, but he would have been in that hospital sooner than you can say hello, sooner than you can slap a tick. He would have been in that hospital asking for help, an immediate sugar reaction or sugar injection to bring that insulin level to some normalcy. The deception, the lies, he didn't know anything about it. Well, I think that from the very first day, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, you've realized that this is not the case. But let's assume for a moment that Michael is indeed blind and doesn't know anything about millions of dollars, hundreds and thousands of dollars. He doesn't realize where all that sudden wealth came from, doesn't know anything. And then he finally finds out. Let's assume that he finds out. And then the state tells you that he would do what? Well, the state cannot tell you. And the question is, what would he do? What would he do that would be so bad that would require Natalie Cochran to kill him?
I mean, have you ever gotten to the hospital faster than you could slap a tick?
Bro, I've never even heard that.
Oh. Okay, I have.
Okay, you're
West Virginia.
You're from West Virginia.
I'm
What-
from Northern Virginia. My family's from there.
What does it mean?
Like, it's just an expression. Like
Like an
quicker than you
actual
could slap a
tick?
tick. Yeah.
Like slapping a tick
slap
off
a
of your
tick.
body?
Yeah.
It's not the best way to go about killing a tick, by the way.
No,
but
you know, but you see it and you.
Aren't you supposed to burn them?
Yeah, or use little tick tweezers. Girl Scouts.
We didn't have to deal with that here when I was a Girl Scouts.
Yeah, I did all my Girl Scouting on the East Coast. We dealt with that a lot. Okay, so
I'm blind to this world.
God.
My gosh. Okay, move on. I'm sorry.
So, at least he kept true to saying his client was a bad girl, which, by the way, he just said all trial, like we've said in here. It's that, and also his other favorite phrase to use during trial was, Michael liked living high on the hog. He enjoyed living life high on the hog.
What does that mean?
It means that he's living a very good lifestyle. He is living a luxurious, like a very high-end lifestyle. Like he's living high on the hog. Life is great. Everything's wonderful.
Okay. These are phrases I've
Hey,
never
all
heard
of our
before.
West Virginia listeners, since we've gained a lot lately, can y'all please comment fun West Virginia sayings and phrases so I can try to explain them to Sam and she can just get a little taste for us?
I'm just confused.
Please and thank you. Anyway, if you remember in the defense's opening statements that they were all about Michael was the picture of health and he was a bodybuilder, Mr. Olympian, if you will. He did tough man competitions. He was dominant and controlling. But now, Michael was a very sick man who could barely walk by the end. He was taking so many pills and steroids, no one knew what he was taking. He had seizures. It was just very, very bad, guys. And not only that, but now there ain't no mention of Natalie's cancer anymore. Now we got heart problems. We need heart surgery. There ain't no help in jail.
Oh, no.
And,
I want to point something out really quick. Those, like, Tough Mudders and, like, mud runs and color runs and all that stuff is open to the public.
no,
Literally anyone can do them. I've done them.
Yeah.
That's terrifying.
yeah. I mean, I didn't do a Tough Mudder because, like, some of those, like, have, like, electrocutey things.
That's
But, like,
wild.
I did a Dirty Dash, and that's pretty much the same thing, so.
I personally like the color run because they literally launch just color at you and it just smacks you in the face.
I
and you're
love
like,
color
"Ah."
runs.
They're so fun.
So Tom Truman for the prosecution gave the state's rebuttal argument, and he asked jurors to recall two numbers during their deliberations. The number 0 for the evidence that supported the defense's theories that Michael was a sickly man, and 21, the number of his blood glucose level that could have only been achieved in a non-diabetic person with a fatal dose of insulin. Truman reminded jurors that the defendant is a trained pharmacist who held herself out as a diabetes specialist. He dismissed the defense explanation that Natalie stored insulin at her home for her friend's diabetic son. He argued she borrowed the insulin that day because she knew her Ponzi scheme would be discovered and knew how to use it to kill her husband. He also debunked this theory that Michael was a very sickly man with this clip, and it's really hilarious, so I'm going to play it for you now.
Zero evidence to support that. On the other side, oh my gosh, the guy was a ticking time bomb. The defense words, a ticking time bomb. He was so sickly. He was essentially a guy with 1 foot in the grave and 1 foot on a banana peel. They don't really have any evidence of that either. He was just a normal 38-year-old healthy male.
The jury was made up of 8 women and 4 men, which I want to point out the defense thought was unfair in the beginning, which doesn't make sense. Wouldn't you want more of a woman jury than a male jury for
8
this?
women and 4 men.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wouldn't you want more women? Okay.
Generally, yes.
The jury deliberated for about 2 hours, which I texted y'all I was going to give them a max of 4 hours.
Mm-hmm.
I thought we were going to be closer to 3 hours. They did it.
2.
They did it. 2 hours. Before finding Natalie guilty of first-degree murder. So, normally, we would go to sentencing, right? Not in West Virginia. I mean, not that same day, but like eventually.
Usually, yeah.
West Virginia has what is called the penalty phase of trial. Mm-hmm. And basically, it's a mini trial where both the defense and prosecution can call witnesses to plead why or why not Natalie should receive mercy. Mm-hmm. Then the jury has to unanimously decide on whether or not to give mercy. In Natalie's case, the jurors were deciding if Natalie would receive a life sentence with the option for parole after 15 years, or a life sentence without parole. If the jury can't decide unanimously, then a new jury will be chosen, and the penalty phase is redone over again.
Fuck that.
Yeah, so that's why we were like, let's hope that doesn't happen. In the penalty phase, It's called the penalty phase of trial, but it's also the mercy phase. You'll see it as both sides, both phrases. The defense actually goes first. So there's opening statements.
To plead.
Yeah, so they have witnesses, they have opening statements, and basically they really play up Natalie's heart condition and the lack of medical care she's going to receive in prison, and that in 15 years her parents aren't going to be alive anymore, and her kids are going to be in their 30s, and they've already missed so much. So give her the mercy so that she can spend time with her children.
Bro, I feel like most prisons have better medical than like,
let me get into that.
Us free people. Weird.
First of all, how about no to her getting mercy? And second of all, I just recently read online that the prison that she's at and the prison she's going to go to are actually ranked as in the worst prisons for medical. So, sucks to suck, Natalie.
Weird if you would just admit to you know, cheating a bunch of people out of their money and not killing your husband, you wouldn't be having this issue. What an idea.
Right? Or just don't kill people.
Crazy.
Natalie's sister, Penny, cried as she took the stand.
Oh, no.
Defense asked her to share all about Natalie's character, and they leave it open for these people to just talk and tell the jury about who Natalie is.
She's not a good girl.
And which is crazy, since they literally trashed her the entire trial with that phrase. And now she's an upstanding citizen and wonderful and a great mom and wife and all of this shit.
I would totally invite her over for dinner.
Yeah. So her sister begged for her to be out for her kids. Natalie's already missed so much, and she's going to miss so much more. I'm sorry, what about what Michael missed? What about what Michael doesn't get to experience with his kids?
Period.
At least Natalie gets to watch it from afar.
Yeah.
What about Donna and Ed Bolt? They don't get to watch Michael grow up.
Where did the kids go? Where did they end up? Do you remember?
Natalie's parents.
Ew, okay.
We're going to get there in a second.
Oh.
But there is cross-examination. So the state went ahead and said, hey, Penny, you're a teacher, right? Penny said, well, yeah, I have been for a long time. And Tom goes, okay. So as a teacher, there's consequences for actions, right? And Penny goes, well, yeah. And he goes, so shouldn't there be consequences for Natalie's actions? And then goes, oh, by the way, didn't you invest in the Ponzi scheme? How much did you invest? She invested $50,000.
Oh, I thought she said probably around there, because I don't know exactly. It was just like me loaning her money. Blah.
On her credit cards.
Yeah, that's what it was.
And she was a single mom at the time.
Okay.
No, like, yeah, she was a
No,
single
I know, I know.
But, like,
I mean, like,
we're praying. Like, just,
you're
like,
okay with just giving your sister money when she has this lavish.
She racked it up on credit cards. Next up was Penny's daughter, Rachel. So Natalie's niece. She thought of Natalie as more of a second mom than an aunt. She spent a lot of time with Natalie and Michael and the kids. Natalie even called her from jail during the trial. And not to talk about the trial, but to see how she was doing, because she knew that she had to put her dog down during trial. And that was very upsetting for her. The prosecution then asked her, it's really hard to lose a dog, isn't it? I can see you're still pretty upset about it. And Penny responds, yeah, it's hard. And they go, well, how do you think it feels to lose a son? I have no more questions, Your Honor.
Goddamn.
And walked away. Oh, yeah, prosecution was not playing during this part whatsoever. But before that, they said, hey, Penny, real quick. Or not real quick. Rachel, real quick. Weren't you supposed to get a scholarship from Natalie?
Oh, I forgot about the scholarships.
Oh, I'm getting into it right now. Yes.
Oh, I forgot.
Rachel was supposed to be a recipient of one of the scholarships that Natalie falsely offered her. It was supposed to pay for her first fall semester at WVU. She still went and graduated, though.
Of course she did.
Next up was Sharon England, Natalie's aunt. And let me just tell you, I cannot believe the audacity this woman had. Standing all 5 foot whatever sitting in front of this jury. First of all, now's the time to tell y'all, Natalie has written a book since she has been in prison.
Ew.
And her aunt chose this time to basically book club it for you. The books Natalie wrote are about devotion and spiritual guidance. One is sold on Amazon, and there are multiple prisons in the surrounding states that have them for their inmates. And she literally continues to talk about how the sun shines out of Natalie's ass. And we're going to get into that book a little bit later here in a second. Then she starts quoting the Bible and using Jesus as a reason for the jury to show her mercy. She then told the jury that God will judge the non-merciful. Like, ma'am, I'm sorry, did you just threaten the jury with God? Then we get into some victim blaming. The prosecution said, if Natalie was such a good person, then where did it all go wrong? She said, Michael asked Natalie to quit being a pharmacist because he was jealous of a coworker, and she would do whatever Michael said. This caused her to make some bad decisions. Oh, I'm not done yet. So the prosecution then threw the 10 Commandments at her and said, what about thou shalt not kill? And suddenly God is a very forgiving man. He's very forgiving to Natalie, but not to the jury who didn't kill anybody, just wants to give her a life sentence in jail. She did end up getting cut off early by the judge and the prosecution for her abrasiveness during her testimony. This book Natalie wrote, it's a spiritual devotion journal.
Wow.
So the thing is, they're allowed to have, no matter where they're at in a prison, they're allowed to have a journal as long as it is for journaling purposes or about spiritual or religious.
Okay.
They cannot deny them to have this.
I know they can't deny like having a Bible or some type of.
So Natalie has 2 books, and this is one of them. I did find it on Amazon as well. But essentially, it gives inmates an opportunity to journal and to have a spiritual connection while also telling her story and her struggles in with it. It's called Dandelions, and we're just, her mom's going to talk about it here in a second. Ugh, I just can't. Anyway, I wanted to turn off her testimony so many times, but I kept watching it because I was like, I've got to see where this is going.
Yeah.
But luckily, she got cut off and told to leave.
Period.
It was a great time. Next up, Natalie's parents spoke. Larry Jessup, who's 72 years old, is Natalie's dad. So yeah, he gonna be, they asked how old he'd be whenever she got out. He gonna be old. If she got out at the 15-year mark. And I really felt bad for Natalie's dad. Because he knew Michael since high school.
Yeah.
They became really good friends. He watched Michael grow up. That's
Yeah.
the father of his grandchildren. He was very, very choked up talking about his relationship with Michael. And I felt so bad for this man.
I mean, ultimately, because did he have any sons?
She has siblings. I think she has sisters. I don't know if she has a brother.
Well, ultimately, Michael is his son.
Yeah.
If he's known him for that long.
Yeah,
Oof.
that was his son. Yeah.
And essentially, his child killed another child.
And so the prosecution asked him something that they kind of asked a lot of people. You know, you have a lot of concern with Natalie not being reunited with her children and how much she's missing. But what about them never reuniting with their father?
Mm-hmm.
And he said that makes him extremely sad. And homeboy started crying. And I feel so bad for him. Like, that's your daughter, and like, and that's somebody else you like. I mean, it's a hard spot to be in as a parent. And
Yeah.
he loves both of them.
It's just like a rock and a hard place and right in
Yeah.
the middle.
And then Daphne Jessup testified. She is 77 now. So,
Mom?
yeah.
Okay.
She's the mom. She's 77, so even older than Dad being if Natalie got out with her 15 years. And that's just like the prosecution pointed out, that's eligible at 15 years. That doesn't mean in 15 years. Because,
Yeah.
we didn't know if we were going concurrent or consecutive.
Yeah.
If she would have gotten mercy, I bet that it would have been consecutive. She said Natalie was a wonderful, talented person. Natalie never gave her any issues. She was always a joy. She always shared half her money. Even when she was little and she would get money for birthdays or Christmases, she always shared it with other kids. She always worked even though she didn't have to. Michael became like a son to her. She retired when MAC was born so that she could be the babysitter and help them out. Then she started talking about Michael. She said, I believe he loved me. Everyone said he did, but he never told me he did. He always said, come on, Daphne, you're coming too, when it came to going out to dinner or going on vacations. She recalled their last vacation and how tired he was all the time, and how when they came back, he was tired and he was just constantly tired and not feeling good. And he thought it was green mold.
Green mold?
Or green, like,
Black mold?
Black mold, yeah. They kept saying green mold in here and not black mold for some reason.
Okay.
No idea. And then she got told to stop bringing up the case by the judge.
Oh.
Then she started talking about Michael and Natalie donating money to her ministry and how they help people in Africa by giving them $5,000 to help a village with food and blankets. Then she brought up the case again and the picture of him on the floor, and she had to be stopped and redirected from the case again. This happens like 5 or 6 times. She then turned her focus on Natalie and brought up her book that she wrote for journaling. And she says that she just called it the dandelion because even dandelions can grow through concrete. She talked about how Natalie's a barista in jail.
She's a barista?
Why are we letting the one who's on trial for poisoning somebody make people's coffee?
Hold on. Why do they need a barista in jail?
Girl, I don't even know.
What? Give him
And
fucking Folgers.
She talked about how the prison just knew it was going to be different when she arrived. How they knew that a light had just arrived into their prison and how everything was going to be better now. Natalie truly lit up the whole place and everyone just loves her. So much so that Natalie even has her family put money on so many of the other inmates' books.
Fuck off.
Well, that's because if Natalie gets money put on her books, a percentage of it goes to the victims.
Yeah.
So Natalie doesn't get money put on her books. Her money gets put on other inmates' books.
And then
And
she
they
has
buy her
them
stuff.
Buy her stuff. Don't worry. Michael's mom told us about that later. Anyway. So here she is. And don't worry, like, if you thought that this woman wasn't delusional, just wait. The state goes, so, how much did you invest in the Ponzi scheme?
Alleged.
And her response was very odd.
Oh.
She said they didn't invest in the Ponzi scheme. They invested in Michael's business. They don't think it was a scheme. They think it's a scam on the kids that isn't being investigated. She continued by saying, we're not victims. We're not victims at all. And immediately said, but we will never get our money back. They invested over $200,000 in these companies. So when asked, where did it all go wrong with Natalie? She responded with this off-the-wall response. Michael watched War Dogs. And Daphne told him, don't do anything stupid. He said, I won't. Then she starts telling him about keeping it in the family and how if he would have just kept it in the family like she told him to, it would have been fine. But when he started involving doctors and state troopers and other people, that's where it was going wrong. I'm sorry, ma'am. Did you just tell us how you advised Natalie on the Ponzi scheme and replaced her name with Michael's name on the stand? Because isn't that what that sounds like?
Yeah.
Does that not sound like Daphne was coaching Natalie through this Ponzi scheme?
Yeah.
Okay.
Delulu is not the Salulu. Stop.
No. And when asked about Michael's family, she chose not to say anything because she couldn't say anything nice about them. And that is what she said. She's a horrible human being, and I will say that right now. Based off of what I have witnessed out of you for the past 2 weeks, you are a horrible human. So, the defense also called the kids to the stand and had these children beg the jury for mercy for their mother, using how much their mom has already missed out on their lives, how much they want her to be there to be a grandma, don't want them missing out on their weddings. They just want their mom. Nothing about how sad they are without their dad. It just, everything was their dad's fault. He was angry, all of it. I truly, genuinely hope that these kids can start to heal now and can look through all these documents and truly watch all of this and truly understand that their dad and their grandparents are not the enemy in this.
Yeah.
And hate
you
me
said-
if you're listening to this. Go ahead and hate me. But, like, it's
you
awful.
said that the kids were given to her family, right? And her family is already, like I said, Delulu.
And
So-
manipulative.
Oh, we're going to get there in a second. Donna touches on it a lot.
Okay.
So, that is the end of the defense witnesses for the penalty phase of this trial. And I wrote this out specifically this way because the state then called their witnesses next. And this happened after a lunch break. When we came back from that lunch break, none of Natalie's family was in the gallery. Natalie's family did not return until the verdict. So, I want you to keep in mind, Michael's family sat in this gallery and had to listen to everything. We had to listen to Donna wail as they showed autopsy photos of Michael. And Natalie's family decided they just didn't have to listen to this anymore. They already asked for mercy, so we're not going to show up to court anymore today.
Okay.
What were you going to say?
Nothing.
Sorry, I just had it like,
You're good.
I'm clearly over that now. Clearly.
Clearly.
It just really bugged me. And I had a couple of you listeners point it out to me as well. Make sure I saw it.
That's fucking wild.
It's the very first time, and that it's the only time during trial that you will see her side of the courtroom empty behind her. So, the state started with Stephanie Hamilton. And so, like, my favorite part of, like, this part of trial is we've already, like, found her guilty for murder. So we ain't tiptoeing around that at this point. We just out here saying it.
She murdered him.
I have a clip that's almost exactly like that. I'm going to play for y'all in a little bit. Ain't gonna lie. So, like, I really like it because now we just saying it.
Period.
All right, so Stephanie said that she felt absolutely betrayed by Natalie, using her physician position as a cover on the day Michael went unconscious to say that she had a doctor at the house, so it was all fine. Stephanie had no idea Natalie was using her for a cover and only had the info Natalie was giving her. She tried to get her to take him to the hospital or clinic or something. And as a friend, she just couldn't believe Natalie would do something like this until everything came out. Stephanie has a sick son with cancer, and Natalie took that opportunity to offer Stephanie a chance to invest in the companies and make more money for her son's treatment and to help her stay home without having a financial burden. She lost $17,000 in the business starting in 2019, and she gave money over time even after Michael died. Stephanie's husband, John Hamilton, testified as well. He also felt used by Natalie that day when she started telling people Michael was fine and used him being there as a state trooper as a reason that he was fine. John also tried to convince Natalie to take him somewhere, and because he didn't do it anyway as a state trooper, he has also had to bear the burden of some of the blame for Michael's death with the community. The way Natalie used Stephanie and John and their careers and her manipulation of the cover-up of Michael's death very, very much was not okay. And I would like to play possibly one of the best mic drop statements from John Hamilton himself.
Concerning the children losing their father.
Yes.
They also lost the mother, right?
Yes, because she killed their father.
I didn't ask you why, sir. I asked you a simple question.
Yes.
You don't like Natalie Cochran, do you?
I don't like that she killed Mike.
Do you not like Natalie Cochran?
I wouldn't say I like her or dislike her, sir. As far as I'm concerned right now, sir, she's a criminal.
So the answer is no, I don't like her. Is it?
If you want to put it that way, sir.
So, snaps, John. Snaps.
She's a criminal.
Mm-hmm. But also, you guys, That's literally Penguin's energy the whole trial. That is the perfect example of like, you're asking not a yes or no question, and they're going to answer it that way, and that's what you still want. Yeah. Let me remind you, this is during the mercy phase, and he is acting like that towards witnesses. It was worse than that during trial.
Like, she's already convicted, sir. It's over. Just move on.
Chris Davis, Michael's best friend and neighbor. This man had such a hard time on the stand this time around.
Oh, I bet.
During trial, I mean, he was there, he had a purpose, he knew what he was doing.
Yeah.
This time he had to talk about him and Michael's relationship and everything. And he was the one who demanded and took Michael to the hospital. Mm-hmm. He said Michael was a great man. He may not have always been the best father or husband or friend. Sometimes he wasn't either. Chris, talking about himself.
Yeah.
But Michael always took care of his friends and family and the community. He loved life. He wasn't sick. He wasn't ready to die. He was healthy. And up until the day he died, he was making plans with me. Chris invested over $500,000 into the business. He was actually one of the ones who did get a return. He got $50,000 to $60,000 back. I'm going to assume he was one of the original investors we spoke about in our episode. He didn't reinvest any money after Mike. He didn't reinvest new money after Mike died. Mm-hmm. But he did reinvest, he did not invest any new money after Michael died, but he did reinvest some of the money that he got back into the company.
Yikes.
Chris said he was a strong defender of Natalie until he found out all the lies about money. He felt absolutely betrayed by Natalie and how she got the insulin from him. He was amazed she continued to stick to that lie during trial. And watching her during trial just killed him.
Yeah.
He doesn't believe that Natalie has ever done anything out of the goodness of her heart in her whole life. And a juicy side note that came to light in all of this, he was their family attorney. And would help them out with things occasionally before Michael died. But he did not help Natalie at all after the death of Michael, even though she was telling everyone he did. So much so that after the federal sentence came back, Natalie filed an ethics complaint on Chris, but the state bar dismissed it. Yeah. He thanked the jury for what they did here these past few weeks and said Mike would like to thank them as well.
Weird.
Michael's stepdad testified, Ed Bolt, and it was heartbreaking. Ed and Donna's testimony was more like victim statements than it was. We're going to play you some clips from his, just because this man, he is in his anger stage of grief still. Very much in his anger stage. Mm-hmm. The combinations of evil... The different combinations you can make with evil person and other things is impressive, okay?
Oh, okay.
The defense was obnoxious during his testimony. He's literally talking about Michael and the person he was, and we have objections left and right. Because we're here to talk about the character of Natalie, not to talk about Michael and who he was alive and as a person. We're here to talk about who Natalie is and her character to get her mercy.
The petty in me would have came out fucking swinging.
Today I stand before everyone, a man filled with grief, pain, bitterness, and anxiety. My name is Ed Bolt. I am Michael Cochran's stepfather. The grief that I feel is when I look out our window at the deer stand that Michael had put up at our house after one day of helping me do a lot of demolition work. He put the deer stand up and then he installed a trail camera so he could do some bow hunting. He was really excited. How are we to know that Michael would never set foot in it again? I often go there now. I have put in a memorial bench there and keep that site clear to brush so we can just sit under that big oak tree and reflect on what could have been. The pain of no more birthday wishes, Christmas holidays, listening to his plans for the future, all taken away. Where there is life, there is hope. Michael was full of life, but wasn't given any hope. This became very clear in Michael's hospital room. There was full of a lot of people. The nursing staff was going to remove the ventilator tube from Michael. Prior to this, the preacher says, "It won't be long now." What did he mean? Where was his hope? We had hope. The nursing staff went to work. All tubes removed. Michael was breathing on his own. Praise God, praise God. You should have seen the look on his wife's face, not of joy, but of disbelief. Evil has many faces, shapes, and images. Evil must be held accountable. Natalie Cochran must be held accountable. Life in prison for a premeditated murder may seem fair, but what I think is just would be to take a rope over here to the courthouse, throw it over the branch of that big oak tree. All right.
Yes, I agree.
So let's just send her to jail. Remove her from society. Let the state take care of her. From jail, she will not be able to harm anyone ever again.
So, during Ed's testimony, the defense decides to come in and be like, hey, so you say that you guys were really close and all the time. What about all those years that you guys weren't allowed to see the kids and that you didn't talk to Michael? And Ed said, well, that's because of Natalie. Natalie made it difficult. Natalie wouldn't allow it. Remember, they weren't allowed at the funeral, all the other stuff that was going on. It makes a whole lot more sense to hear it coming from Ed and Donna than it does to hear the Natalie version that was floating around about why Michael and them suddenly quit talking over a babysitting issue when they were younger.
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah. Donna Bolt, man. I'm going to link her entire time on the stand below because Homegirl had 8 pages up there, and she was walking us through from Michael and Natalie met in high school, them going off to college, when they were Homegirl was like, and then the next day, and then they were this age, and like, she kept getting cut off to be like, we're not telling a life story. But she really went in, and she went off on calling her evil. And they both do. But she also gets in on about what happened that day and how Natalie didn't call them till that night at the hospital. And how when he got moved to ICU, Natalie called her and said, no one's allowed to come here. No one can be in here. The defense is like, you know that you can only have one person in the ICU. She goes, no, Natalie said that no one was allowed to come up there. There's a time in the hospital when they actually got Michael, like...
Stabilized?
Not stabilized, but...
Close.
Moaning a little bit. Like more responsive than he'd been yet.
Okay.
Okay. And when this happened, they looked over at Natalie, and where she should have had a look of joy on her face, she had a look of fear and terror that Michael could be okay. So... Donna just really goes off in her statement about everything. We're going to play some clips out here for you, but yeah. Go listen to her whole thing because it's a lot, and she does a very good job of laying out all of the stuff. Like, I could have been here with you 30 more minutes for everything that she laid out in that thing. Go watch it.
Is Michael Brandon resting in peace? I don't think so. We, as Michael Brandon's mom and stepdad, we respectfully ask this court in the memory of our beloved and precious son, Michael Brandon Cochran, to delay for as long as judicially allowed the day that this cold-blooded murderer once again walks among us. In a pew world, Light should never shine on that day. Evil, for reasons only evil knows, took it upon herself to steal from us and the world. We take comfort as best we can in believing our Michael, our beautiful, intelligent, kind-hearted Michael, is waiting for us in God's heavenly mansion in the air. We ask this court that Natalie Cochran be sentenced to life in the state prison for the rest of her natural life, with no pardon, no mercy, and no deals. This evil, narcissistic sociopath intentionally and knowingly pre-planned and committed first-degree premeditated murder, stealing the life of our son, Michael Brandon Cochran, at the young age of 38. To the court, Natalie Cochran will speak at her sentencing today because she has to have the last word. The simple truth is that while growing up, and even as an adult, this spoiled, evil, narcissistic murderer had seldom, if ever, been denied this which she wanted. The word no was not spoken or heard of in her world. She will try to blame my precious son Michael for her evilness and deceit. Natalie may even shed a tear or two, but we have now come to know that every word coming out of Natalie Cochran's mouth will just be another lie, and her tears will be fake tears trying to get sympathy from your court. Natalie is going to use Michael's children to get sympathy here today. She tried to do that with their testimonies during the trial. Judge, please don't fall for her con. That's what Natalie does. She only cares about herself. She will use, abuse, and manipulate anyone to get in her way. But we know the real Natalie Cochran, the thief, the liar, the taker of life, and the doer of evil deeds. Throughout these 6 years, we have had to just sit back and be silent while Natalie gives newspaper and media interviews about my precious son, Michael, and her statements about what happened on February 6, 2019, and the incidences leading up to his death. The media will not try this case. All of the evidence and the proven facts and her conviction are enough to sentence Natalie Cochran to life in prison with no mercy. We've kept quiet as Natalie continues to blame Michael for her evilness that did not stop even after his death. While my son lay in the hospital on the ventilator, Natalie Cochran texted me government contracts on my phone. Believing and trusting her because she was our beloved daughter-in-law and because we loved her, Natalie manipulated us once again. Michael is not here to defend himself, but we are here. We are standing up for him and speaking for Michael and ourselves and asking the court for justice. We ask that you please, please, no mercy. She never gave Michael any mercy.
Prosecution and defense delivered their closing statements. And, I mean, they had some mic drops in there. And basically, defense, Natalie deserves mercy. Let her see her parents, let her see her kids, let her grow up, blah, blah, blah. Prosecution is, Michael didn't get this chance.
Period.
Why should they?
Yeah.
Like, it's not happening. And I thought we were going to get like a 20-minute jury deliberation and we were going to be right back out. I was going to be quick. I was going to be easy.
Mm-hmm.
I got scared, y'all. I got scared. Hour and 20 minutes is how long it took them to decide whether or not they were going to give her mercy. I don't know why I was scared for this part. We were already convicted. I just didn't want her to have the chance of parole.
Because unfortunately, she probably could have gotten it. If they were able to give her parole for murder, she would have gotten it.
I could see her have gotten out on parole in order to pay back the Ponzi scheme.
Yes, exactly.
I could see that being a mitigating factor in releasing her so that she can pay those out. The jury did decide no mercy.
Period.
So, the judge decided that she will run a concurrent life sentence to her federal sentence. She will not get out in between sentences. I believe at the end I heard them talking about February 24th is when her life sentence would start. And so essentially she's in a federal prison right now When she finishes at her federal prison, she will be transferred to a state prison.
Okay. That makes sense.
And that's where she will serve her life sentence for the murder is there. Yay! Yay! 6 years later.
So we just sat here for a hot minute because math ain't mathing with ages. So we're going to dive into it later. But in case you happen to catch any math that we were talking about, something's wrong. We're confused.
So during trial,
Yeah.
everything was stated that Nicole, the daughter, is 22. MAC is 17. When referencing how old they were when Michael died and this stuff, Nikki was 13, MAC was 9.
But he just died 6 years ago.
But Michael died 6 years ago.
That doesn't make
February
sense.
6th of this year will be 6 years. So these kids can't be these ages.
No. That's all we're
confused about right here. But like everything that I've said age-wise and number-wise legitimately came out of trial and is exactly what came out of prosecution, defense, and these kids' mouths. But the math ain't mathin', so somebody help us.
Just in case you're confused, so are we. That's all we wanted to touch on.
Okay. So, I think we can say something now that we didn't get to say in our July episode. Do we have justice for Michael?
I think we have justice for Michael.
I think we have justice for Michael because Natalie is never getting out of prison.
Justice loaded.
It loaded. Do you have any extra thoughts?
I have no further thoughts.
We had a lot of thoughts during this.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for joining us for our first trial recap. That was fun.
That was a lot.
It was a lot.
That was a
lot.
The
trial was a lot. There's a lot I didn't even put in there, so go watch it. It was fun.
There's a lot of mouth noises and breathing. Be ready. Not a fan.
If you enjoyed hanging out with us today, go ahead and hit that follow, like, subscribe button so that you never miss another episode or anything to do with us.
Yeah.
Because you don't want to do that. And if you haven't already, head over to our website, justiceforpodcast.com. We have resources on there, all of our episodes, links to all of our social media. You can find our TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, all of that on there. Please go like and follow us. We have a lot over there during the week and other times for you. And, oh yeah, we can submit a case on there. We've been getting a lot of case submission, guys.
Love it.
We love this.
Honestly, the case submissions have been kind of a lifesaver because we've been an absolute mess. And we haven't been sure what cases to do. And so you guys sending them in have been lovely.
It's been great.
Except for the one next week. I'm a little upset. It's fine. It's fine.
It'll be fine. Yeah, that's all I've got. You got anything else?
I have nothing.
All right.
Yeah?
All right.
Cool. Thank you for joining us. We love you guys, and we will catch you next week. Okay? Love you. Bye.